We're going to start cutting out rails now to put on the boat, because I want to do that before I jump stitch interiors so that the rails will set up the curve of the hull panels and not the hull panels, those thin wavy hull panels trying to distort the curve of these heavier rails. I'd used this other thicker stock this size on the inside and outside of the Granville Bay with spacer blocks, but I'm going to cut these in half. I don't need the weight, and I think I'm going to use the spacer rail system on this too. The outside will be continuous, the inside will be 3-on 3-off blocks along the full length, and then the solid piece on the inside. I find that gives me a beam structure, which makes the sides very stiff. I'm going to make this hull, I'll have some compartments on the ends, but very small ones. This will not be like a decked over kayak, even though if you want to, you can. So I've got the table saw set up. I got a brand new blade I bought yesterday, a new Olson 1/2-inch 3-tooth hook, and it's a raker. So that's 3 tooths to the inch, so it's a great big huge thing, and it really cuts much better than those little, you know, like 6 or 8 teeth to the inch. And I got me a new feather board, and I got that set up with a piece of scrap wood so that I know that, you know, it'll hold it in place. And I got this long board here that we used underneath the hull to start with to support it, and as it goes out, in a better world, and I finally ever get into a real space, I will set up a bench for these long out feed tables, and then some sort of roller table for the inside to make these long pieces a little bit more manageable. So I guess let me go ahead and get set up. We'll come back and we'll start ripping out some stuff. I'll set up a little close here to see so you can watch what's going on. The new belt and adjust the wheels on my bandsaw, and give the tape to cut this out. Wrestling with these 16-footers, and they're kind of limber anyway when they're just one piece, and they get worse when they're smaller. But there's a couple of times in there that have been nice to have had probably an in-feed, because I noticed that as I was holding it, I was trying to keep it into the fence, and the finger plate was doing a good job of doing that, but every once in a while I would put a slight bow, you know, 10 feet out, 8 feet out, 6 feet out, and then that would kind of like disrupt it coming through. So I'm wiser now, and hopefully you can be wiser too. So I'm going to make, I got some other pieces I'm going to, because I'm going to need about 14 feet of these, 2 of them, but I'm going to need the spacers, so I've got some more material I'm going to rip in half now, just to have the spacer blocks. So we'll come back when I get that done. You don't need to watch me do that. Well, I figured, well, I had this thing set up to rip out this, and a little, always have your safety thing when you got little short pieces to push through. I still have all my fingers. Always be careful. But, as I said, while I have this thing set up, it gave me a good chance to rip open some maple I had, various sizes. I had some black walnut block here. I was able to cut into pieces. It was a bitter end with some bad spots in it, but I might be able to use these for like a breast hook. And then I had some Brazilian hardwood, some Brazilian cherry flooring somebody gave me as an example, so rip that in half. And then I had some sapele, or however you want to pronounce it, so that'll work. And then I got some more of it, a little bit longer pieces, and then I got some white oak that I can use too. So we'll come back. Got to clean up. You keep seeing me using these things around. These are Bogan. I don't know if Bogan is still in business or they were bought out by somebody else, but they call them century stands, C-stands. This one is a turtle one because the shaft comes off the base. And then got the swivel head and a grip clamp, but I've used this thing so many times for this function to hold the end of something else up while I've got the bar out here. This is one I was using to hold that side panel in. And one of my little blue sandbags down here Bob in Alaska was asking me about. I can make this, but you can go online and find them. They're just weight bags. Go to a film and video supply store, a big one, and you'll find all this stuff there. Or your local, if your town's big enough where you have a photography shop, they will most likely have these things in. It's always nice to have one. This one's probably about 140, 150 bucks for one unit, maybe more now, but I've had these for a while, but you can usually find them used, but they're really a help around the shop. So. And that's my Jet 1000 beef air filtration system. It's got this fan in it and filter system. Let me switch around the other side so you can see what I'm talking about. And it's remote controlled. I can use my hand and turn it off and turn it back on again. And then that's the working end with the filter. There's that HEPA style filter there, but there's another very fine cloth, probably the HEPA filter, that's more like your furnace filter, but there's another one inside, and I need to probably check that. It's been a while since I've looked at them. Probably been some of you that have been wondering, when is he ever going to measure for square? I already did this, so I know the answer. 164 3/8. Center up the tape on the corner. Keep some good tension on it. So 164 3/8. There we go, right there. 164 3/8. Both sides equal, so we're square. Part of what I've been doing this morning is going around and figuring out how long of blocks, spacer blocks I'm going to have in here between the gap and then spacer blocks, because we're going to use the space rail system, because I find that's lighter than solid rails, but strong, very strong. It's like building the beam, because the strength, remember, in all the plywood stuff was on the surfaced areas, so the stuff in between is kind of filler. So it does it, when you're doing it, it seems like it's not really as stiff as what you think it's going to be. So what I did was measure the length, the upper surface arc length, and the other thing I made a change on. Once I'd cut out the rail material, I put it down to some marks that I put in on the rail here, or on the top shear line, to that other set of drawings I had for the for the lofting, for that lower shear line here, a little more drop to it. But I was conflicted as to whether to go with that or with the straight side. To build the boat, it's much easier to do with the straight side, and now that I've gotten to look at it, it's kind of like a, I don't know, a cross between a canoe and a kayak, or whatever the way you want to call it. I would just assume, I mean, this is for, if you want to buy a canoe or a kayak, there's plenty of places and plenty of plans out there, but I wanted for the electric motorcraft, to have something that, somebody like my age, or somebody that maybe is a little bigger or heavier or taller or whatever, has something to comfortably get into. So we're going to have this as an open top canoe style with the air tanks in the ends, maybe a little bigger than normal for a canoe, but maybe some storage areas or whatever. But I'm going to go and stay with the higher sides on this thing, but I will clamp the rails and give you a low level perspective. It looks funky the way it is now until you get the rail material. You get some two-toning going on. It makes it look better. But getting back to what I said was I measure my length. I want to have 6 inches on the end before I start the spacing. So you got to work out the ratio of ending up with a gap on each end, because I'm going to go 2-3, 2-inch gap, 3-inch spacer, 2-inch gap, 3-inch spacer with 6-inch solids on the ends. And so I finally, I was going at 3 3s, 2 4s, and 2 3s comes out divisible with an odd number. It's like when you're building a fence. you have, so many panels, but you have to remember to buy that extra fence post because you need the one on the end that you stop at. So, and I'm also going to, I'm going to put a little gel magic in the nose next thing up. I'll do that off camera. I want to get the nose, the top couple inches gel magic together so it can't come apart, so I can remove that upper wire, because then I'm going to go ahead and put in the rails on the inside and outside, and then I'll fill the wedge that I have left over with some of the pretty wood, some of the walnut and oak and the sapelli that we had left over when I was playing on the bandsaw there. But I wanted to also get a count to see how much more I'm going to have to cut before I go change out that new 1/2 inch blade back to the 3/8, so I can, with finer teeth, so I can start cutting these little pieces in. So I'm going to put the rails in first and then set the gel magic, because I want the sides of the panel to be set by the rails and not by glue in the bottom. If it's because early boats I've distorted or had some distortions I didn't like, and I've also got my cross piece in, and so the beam is officially set at 34 inches outside to outside on the top edge. On the plywood, it'll be just a hair wider the thickness of our rail material on the outside, both sides. So 34 3/4 probably overall. But that can be changed. I mean, if you don't want it, if you're constricted by width, you can shorten that cross piece down and then bring the sides in. I found that when you pull the sides out, you get a little more rocker on the boat, but not so much on this one. So enough of this, and we'll go on. I'm going to go ahead and put the gel magic in the nose, and we'll come back later when I start working on the rails.